On the morning of June 28, 1914, a 19-year-old boy stood on a street corner in Sarajevo with a pistol in his hand and no real plan. He fired 2 shots. Within 6 weeks, the entire world was at war. Within 4 years, 20 million people were dead. Empires that had stood for centuries collapsed overnight. The map of the world was redrawn from scratch, and the boy who started all of it, Gavrilo Princip, spent the rest of his life in a prison cell, dying slowly of tuberculosis, haunted by what those 2 bullets had unleashed. This is the story of the most consequential accident in human history. To understand what happened in Sarajevo, you have to understand who Gavrilo Princip was, because he was nobody. He was born in 1894 in a tiny village in Bosnia, the son of a postman. His family was so poor that his parents sent him away at age 9 just so there would be one less mouth to feed. He walked to Sarajevo, over 60 miles, as a child alone to find a better life. He was small, sickly, and brilliant. He devoured books. He was radicalized young by the thing that radicalized every young man in the Balkans at the turn of the century: the humiliation of his people under Austro-Hungarian rule. Bosnia had been annexed by the Austro-Hungarian Empire in 1908. Slavic people, Bosnians, Serbs, Croatians, were second-class citizens in their own land, ruled by an empire that saw them as inferior. Princip became obsessed with the idea of a unified South Slavic state, free from foreign control. He joined a nationalist movement called Young Bosnia. He was 17 years old. He tried to join the Serbian guerrilla fighters and was turned away. Too small, too weak. He was rejected by the army of the revolution he believed in. So he went back to school. He read more books. He waited. And then, in the spring of 1914, he heard that Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was coming to Sarajevo. The assassination plot was organized by a shadowy Serbian nationalist group called the Black Hand, which supplied weapons and smuggled Princip and 6 co-conspirators across the border into Bosnia. The group had pistols, grenades, and cyanide capsules to be swallowed after the act, so no one could be captured and talk. The plan was straightforward. 7 assassins would line the route of Franz Ferdinand's motorcade through Sarajevo. One of them would get a shot. June 28th was chosen deliberately. It was Vidovdan, St. Vitus Day, the anniversary of the 1389 Battle of Kosovo, a date of profound national grief for Serbian people. The symbolism was intentional. Franz Ferdinand's security was, by modern standards, almost laughably inadequate. The motorcade drove through open streets. The Archduke sat exposed in an open car. The route had been published in the local newspaper. The first assassination attempt happened early. One of the conspirators threw a grenade at the motorcade. It bounced off the Archduke's car and exploded under the following vehicle, injuring several people. The Archduke was unharmed. The conspirators scattered. The plot had failed. Princip, convinced the mission was over, walked to a nearby deli called Schiller's Delicatessen and bought a sandwich. What happened next is one of the most bizarre coincidences in the history of the world. After the grenade attack, Franz Ferdinand insisted on changing his route to visit the injured officers at the hospital. His driver was not informed of the route change. The motorcade turned down Franz Josef Street, the original planned route, by mistake. When the lead car realized the error, it stopped to turn around. It stopped directly in front of Schiller's Delicatessen, directly in front of Gavrilo Princip. Princip was standing 5 feet away from the Archduke of the Austro-Hungarian Empire in an open car, engine idling, completely still. He had a pistol. He had 1 second to decide. He fired twice. The first bullet hit Franz Ferdinand in the jugular vein. The second hit his wife, Sophie, in the abdomen. Both were dead within the hour. Princip tried to swallow his cyanide capsule. It made him vomit. He tried to shoot himself. The crowd grabbed him before he could. He was arrested on the spot, 19 years old, having just accidentally changed the course of human history. What happened next moved with terrifying speed. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia for the assassination and issued an ultimatum, a list of demands so humiliating that Serbia could never fully accept them. It was designed to be rejected. Austria-Hungary wanted a war with Serbia, and now they had their excuse. Serbia mobilized. Austria-Hungary declared war. Russia, bound by treaty to protect Serbia, mobilized its army. Germany, bound by treaty to Austria-Hungary, declared war on Russia. France, bound by treaty to Russia, was pulled in. Germany invaded Belgium to attack France. Britain, bound by treaty to protect Belgium, declared war on Germany. In 6 weeks, from 2 gunshots outside a Delhi, the entire continent was at war. The system of alliances that European powers had spent decades building, believing it would keep the peace through mutually assured destruction, instead meant that a single spark ignited everything simultaneously. Nobody wanted a world war. Nobody planned a world war. But the machinery was so perfectly constructed for catastrophe that once it started moving, no one could stop it. Princip was too young to be executed under Austro-Hungarian law. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison and transferred to a fortress in the Czech Republic, where he was kept in brutal conditions, chained, confined, isolated. His tuberculosis, which had plagued him since childhood, rapidly worsened. His arm became so infected it had to be amputated. He weighed around 88 pounds when he died in April 1918, just 7 months before the war he started finally ended. He was 23 years old. The war killed 20 million people. The Spanish flu, which spread partly because of the war's movement of troops, killed 50 million more. The humiliation of Germany in the peace treaty directly caused the conditions that brought Adolf Hitler to power. World War II, 60 million dead, grew directly from the unresolved wounds of the first. 2 bullets outside a Delhi in 1914 created a chain of consequences that didn't fully stop until 1945, and some would argue the reverberations are still being felt today. Historians have debated for a century whether World War I was inevitable, whether the alliances, the imperial tensions, the arms race meant that something would have triggered it eventually, even without Princip. Maybe. But it wasn't triggered by something else. It was triggered by a sick, rejected, 19-year-old boy who stopped for a sandwich. History doesn't move in straight lines controlled by powerful men making careful decisions. It lurches, it stumbles, it pivots on moments so small and random that if you changed one detail, if Franz Ferdinand's driver had known about the route change, if Princip had gone to a different Delhi, if the car hadn't stalled, everything might have been different. 20 million people died because a driver made a wrong turn. That's not a metaphor. That's just what happened. Subscribe, because history is stranger and more fragile than anyone wants to admit.